Greetings, and welcome back to the 31 Nights of Frights. Before we start today's video, I just want to let you guys know that Arrow Video have just started their 𝙎𝙬𝙊𝙀 sale. In this sale, you can get up to 50% off Blu-rays, 4Ks, and limited edition releases. On top of that, I also have my own discount code, �REALHORROR, that if you guys use at the checkout, you'll get an additional 10% off your order. The discount code can be used on all products on the site besides pre-orders, but it can also be used on discounted items in the sale. There'll be a link in the description of this video so you can head over to the Arrow store, take a look at all the amazing releases that Arrow have on offer, and then use the discount code to save yourself some cash. And just to let you guys know, the 𝙎𝙬𝙊𝙀 sale lasts all month. Anyway, onto the video. In the previous episode, we took a look at the summer blockbuster that made people afraid to go into the sea, and it also made a household name out of its director, Steven Spielberg. Of course, that movie was none other than Jaws from 1975. The film took the world by storm and is still one of the most celebrated films in cinema history. But in today's video, we'll be returning to the legendary filmmaker George Romero, and taking a look at what is probably the most celebrated zombie film in cinema history. We already covered his groundbreaking debut film Night of the Living Dead in a previous episode of this series, and if you haven't seen that episode and you want to see my review of Night of the Living Dead, I recommend you go check that out. But just to bring things up to speed, Night of the Living Dead came out in 1968, a time where independent filmmaking was relatively unheard of, and after managing to raise just over $100,000, George Romero and his extremely small crew set out to make a full feature-length horror movie on their shoestring budget. What would come as a result of this would be what is considered to be one of the most important films in the history of horror. Not only did Night of the Living Dead pushed the boundaries of on-screen gore and violence, which caused a lot of controversy at its time of release, but it also created the whole zombie subgenre of film and essentially established zombies as we know them today. The lasting legacy and importance of Night of the Living Dead cannot go understated, and 10 years later, Romero would unleash a new zombie film onto the world, with a bigger budget, bigger ideas, and also much more blood and gore. This is 1978's Dawn of the Dead. A full decade after the ridiculously successful Night of the Living Dead, George Romero was ready to return to the undead and make a new zombie flick. Upon visiting the Monroeville Mall in Pennsylvania, Romero was inspired to use the location as the basis for his next apocalyptic project that would centre around a group of survivors taking refuge there to survive the horde of flesh eaters. News of Romero's planned project ended up making its way all the way to Italy, where it came to the attention of the Italian master of horror, Dario Argento. Argento made a deal with Romero in which he would help finance the movie in exchange of its international distribution rights. For those of you who don't know, Dario Argento is one of the most influential horror filmmakers of our time, whose work within the giallo subgenre has resulted in the creation of classic movies such as Deep Red, Tenebrae, and Suspiria. But we'll talk a bit more about Argento in the next episode. Dawn of the Dead can be seen as a follow-up to Night of the Living Dead, but it isn't really a direct sequel. This movie features completely different characters and it doesn't require seeing the first one. As the film begins, the zombie plague has already made its way all across the United States of America, and the film doesn't waste any time at all getting into its gore effects and dropping you straight into the mayhem. At the start of the film, a SWAT team raid a housing project and are attacked by the reanimated corpses inside, and it's absolutely brutal. We see people's flesh being ripped off and a head gets blown to smithereens. Two of these SWAT team members, Peter, played by Ken Foree, and Roger, played by Scott Reininger, join up with traffic reporter Stephen, played by David Emge, and his pregnant wife Fran, played by Galen Ross, and they steal a helicopter to escape from the city. First, they land at a gas station for fuel and come across more of the living dead, including the checkered shirt zombie who appears on the film's iconic poster art, and additionally a zombie that has its scalp cut off by the blades of a helicopter in one of the film's most memorable moments. Within this scene, there is some zombie children who attack Peter and end up being gunned down. This scene is pretty heavy, even today, and I imagine it would have spawned a lot of controversy back in 1978. The group soon come across a shopping mall, which is the ideal place to take refuge during the zombie epidemic, as it has everything they could ever need right at their fingertips. And this acts as the primary location for the rest of the movie. At first, they need to strategically lure all of the zombies out of the mall, and it's during this time that you find yourself really rooting for these characters and their survival. As the movie goes on, you begin to connect with them as if they were real people. We talked about a similar thing in the last episode with Jaws, but the character development is very important. Becoming invested in these people surviving the apocalypse makes all the horror sequences way more tense. It's also great to see these characters connect with one another and become a real team. This soon leads to the real comic relief and fun aspect of the film, where the characters take advantage of having the shopping mall all to themselves. And I'm sure that in the past, many of us have thought about what it would be like to be in that situation. In the last act of the movie, a motorcycle gang led by the master of gore, Tom Savini, who did all the special effects work for the film, break into and raid the mall, which as a result allows hundreds of zombies to come back inside. In an absolutely chaotic finale, the movie goes into all-out gore mode and becomes an absolute splatterfest. Machetes go into heads, people are ripped to shreds, and pies go into faces? Now that's some hardcore shit right there. They had to film most of these scenes at night, as the shopping mall would still be open during the day, which is pretty crazy to think about considering all the blood and guts and body pieces that must have been splattered all over the place. Someone was definitely given the job of cleaning all that up before the morning. It actually makes me wonder if any shoppers may have found some brains lying around the next day. Dawn of the Dead ended up being a massive commercial success at the box office. It grossed a total of $66 million from its $640,000 budget. Of course, due to its ultra violence and gruesome effects, the film was controversial and given an X rating in the States, and was even liable to be banned over here in the UK and put on the video nasties list. Romero would go on to make a sequel, Day of the Dead, in 1985, but Dawn of the Dead was also followed by a string of unofficial sequels over in Italy. Remember when I talked about Argento having the international distribution rights earlier? Well, in Italy, Dawn of the Dead was released under the title Zombie, and a year later the godfather of gore, Lucio Fulci, would release a sequel, Zombie 2. In the UK, this film would be released under the title Zombie Flesh Eaters, and unlike Dawn of the Dead, this film was banned and it was put on the video nasties list. I'm actually really fortunate enough to own this 4K box set release of Dawn of the Dead from the company Second Sight Films, and this thing is absolutely packed with content. I talked about this one and I showed it off in my physical media collection video, so if you're interested in that kind of stuff, I highly recommend you check that video out. Along with the original theatrical cut, the box set actually includes 2 other cuts of the movie, including Dario Argento's version, which includes various extended scenes and features more music from the band Goblin, who collaborated with Argento frequently. If you can get your hands on this release, I couldn't recommend it enough. As we talked about previously, Night of the Living Dead was one of the most important horror movies of its era, and, intentionally or not, included social political themes. But unlike Night, Dawn's social political commentary is much more in your face and a bit more obvious. Night of the Living Dead unintentionally included subtle commentary regarding racism within the United States. Dawn does the same, but it's not very subtle at all. Also, the social satire of comparing mall shoppers to zombies is just genius, and it's a true reflection of some of the more ugly parts of consumerism within our society. And I've seen this firsthand when I worked in retail at a clothing store. When it was sale day, and I shit you not, people would be queuing outside an hour before the shop even opened, and I swear to God I saw some of them putting their hands on the glass just like zombies do in films. Just take a look at those Black Friday videos that make the rounds on the internet every year. They speak volumes. In conclusion, Dawn of the Dead's legacy has been cemented in pop culture and film history, and it's also gone down as possibly the greatest film in the zombie subgenre. Its influence can be seen throughout a plethora of media, from other movies to video games and everything in between. A couple of examples out of a possible million would include 2004's Shaun of the Dead, I think the title says it all really, and the video game Dead Rising that is set in a shopping mall. When I was a kid, I was already familiar with the trope of zombies being in a shopping centre or a mall setting, and this was before I saw Dawn of the Dead. To me, Dawn of the Dead is the ultimate zombie movie. Some incredible films have come out in the years since, but Dawn of the Dead will always be the quintessential zombie movie, just like how George A. Romero will forever be the king of the zombies. So that concludes today's episode. Don't forget to join me in tomorrow's video as we take a look at one of the most beloved horror movies in history. When it was released in 1978, it basically kick-started the popularity and the golden age of the slasher film. It would establish many tropes and become the literal blueprint for thousands of movies to follow. And it also stars none other than William Shatner? Yes, we're finally doing that movie, and I'll see you there.